the way off, we're just dealing with the weight of the keys and all the parts, their relationship and the leverages.
Comes off and you just set it on the keys, either white or black. There's a single post that calls for a pivot and a deal right here. And then you have this adjustable brass weight that goes out. This sits on the key that you want to find out what the down weight is and the up weight is on a grand piano. It adjusts here on the side and you slide it up and down the scale. The farther it gets out here, the heavier it gets. I'm going to...
It's always, no matter what you're using as far as gram weights and the like, the initial inertia of the key you have to overcome, and most people do that by knocking the underside of the keypad or something else like this to get past the.
But when I did that, or you know, I do it at the most of an eighth of an inch.
When I was employed at Mason and Hamlin in Massachusetts for the summer, I inserted the weights into their new grand pianos. And so they had me put the right weight at each key tip, then I would just tap it on the side. But there were no dampers because it was all on a bench. Tap it and it would just slowly go down and touch the up weight. So I've never seen that kind of a device before, so I'm wondering how that would work in that scenario. But they trained me to where to put the weights, and you have to drill a little hole, and you have this fun little mechanism that inserts and squishes the weights in place.
And you tap on what to get it
Just tap
overcome?
on the table or the side or the keypad or something to get the.
Is that the same thing what Marty was saying?
Yeah.
I want to take it home and do that with it and see if it gets a little better.
Tap it, but you had to give it some kind of a momentum because it wouldn't just go down with dead weight. You had to kind of get past that inertia. But it was interesting to me how these were brand new actions just off the front finish, because I did the regulation after they'd done all the traveling and everything else, and so I did the very initial regulations for all their new grand pianos, and it's interesting how the location of the weights would adjust dramatically from note to note, and I can possibly attribute that to the weight of the keys being from different sections of wood, or the key tops, or maybe just the inertia or from the action, how the center pinning is varies so much. It was interesting how it was not always as consistent as I thought it should be.
Would it vary from piano to piano as well? In
Yeah.
other words, C2, would it always be in the same place?
No. Everything was done per piano. Mm-hmm. So there was no specification that I had to follow this exact routine or position. They just said if it works where you have the weights, because I had to use 2, maybe 3 weights on each key in some areas, up in the higher area, none, or maybe one weight. But it was interesting how it would vary so much dramatically from note to note, even in the same section.
I think that's why keys should be weighed off. But the interesting thing in Yamaha, I can't speak for Kawai, but I know in Yamaha, they free-weight the keys, and they have very good consistency. Again, they're
Who
very
makes Yamaha's action?
they're very concerned about getting rid of any undue friction.
Even just at the weight, you got your friction and your bushings, but if you'd weigh your hammerheads, you'd be surprised. You think it's a smooth curve.
Oh, no, it's probably
They're not.
very different.
The shanks.
So when you do that, you don't adjust the center pinning, you adjust the torque from the center pinning. Is that correct?
No, you got to have a proper pinning before you do any type of weigh off. So you're not going to do a weigh off to compensate for bad pinning. You got to have your pinning proper, so that your friction is falling in to the right area.
Okay.
The right.
So how long does it take you to just take a random grand piano to do you call it weigh off? Is that similar to action regulation, or is it a different step?
A regulation is a part of it. It has to be at least somewhat well regulated before we start and take our measurements.
So how long
And then after that, we do a full regulation. But the way off, we're just dealing with, the weight of the keys and all the parts, their relationship and the leverages.
Do you ever use a tool like these here?
No, I just use brass weights.
Do you sand the hammer tails or thin the hammers to meet the criteria sometimes? Or
If I need to,
do you ever have to work on the shank? Okay.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
What about the actual whippings? Do you ever have to get into the whippings and make any adjustments there?
No, I mean, I have in the past, but basically all we do is Steinway in the shop and we're using runner parts, and so the whippings are coming in pretty much where we want them. Most of the whippings are weighing in about 16.5 to 17.5 grams, and that works well. But there have been some off-brand pianos I've done in the past where, you know, the whippings are so stinking heavy that we'll drill holes through them just to try to get some weight out of them.
Yeah. Steinways of various eras, you have to be careful that you're getting to appropriate dimensions from your center pin to your knuckle. Just make sure you get that right initially, and you'll be someplace in the ballpark then, and then you can weigh off keys appropriately. But I've seen actions where people just simply bought the wrong parts, or if, hey, in my defense as well as everyone else, 20 years ago, we didn't have the options for that. You got Steinway parts and you put them in, and if it's too heavy, you started adding weights, you know, because they didn't make varied dimension for parts. And so you have to figure that in a little bit. Getting back to some of those off brands and things like this, and even some name brands, I've found Kawai's where I had to move the action rails because they weren't established right in the first place, either in the factory or else screws got so loose things got shifted. It is a complicated thing. Putting weights in the keys seems like the answer, but it's not always the answer. It's not always the first thing you need to check.
Yeah, it's kind of the end result, yeah.
Yeah, that's the finesse area maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of like voicing. Needling is the last thing.
If you're working with brand new parts, you know, and the manufacturer's making them and it says this is what we got, you don't have an option.
But it's nice because you're working with fresh keys in a rebuild situation. Now we have to deal with existing weights that are there, and so we decide, well, do we pop these out, plug them, re-drill? Do we work around them? You know, when you got the fresh keys, you can just move your leads. And so you were doing everything from scratch, or were the keys somewhat pre-leaded?
No weights whatsoever.
Really?
After they finished the fore finish and, you know, set the key bed and everything inside the key well, everything was good. Then I had to raise the hammer line, adjust the jacks, do all the regulation part, set the key height, etc. And after all that was done, I had to measure for key weights. Put some random weights on there, then put the 50 grams or whatever in the key front, and then just tap it. If it goes down, then you're good. And then you gotta put a different weight. I think it's 20 or a lighter weight gram for the up weight, and see if it comes up smoothly. And that's where you do it. So you take a red pencil, mark where the weights need to go, remove the action stack, drill the holes, put the things in, then put it all back together.